The Tigers pull off the stunning upset in overtime, and we're here to bask in the afterglow. It's Locked on LSU. Let's get it.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thrilled to have you with us here. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. LSU gets it done. 29-26 in overtime. The Tigers celebrate 100 years of Tiger Stadium with what else? An iconic moment that Tiger Stadium and those who saw it will remember forever. I want to talk about what the win means for LSU and certainly for Ole Miss as well in the Southeastern Conference. We'll run through the game, some of the key standout players and moments as well. But I couldn't help but think about this. And if you'll allow me, I'm going to start by waxing a little poetic. Yes, listen, the win for LSU is massive. It moves LSU to 5-1 on the season. They're 2-0 in conference play. And that is super significant because even though you have a loss already, it's in the non-conference. And you just hung a second conference loss on Ole Miss, which all but eliminates them from SEC championship contention and puts their playoff hopes on life support. And they still have to play Georgia, but plenty to get there as well. But, I want to take a moment and to begin here so we can actually step back and appreciate what we were all able to witness on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. Listen, I know that Tiger Stadium is fallen victim to what a lot of places have. This arms race of stadium expansion had these 100,000 seat venues in a time where the home viewing experience is so good. And quite honestly, people aren't interested in fighting traffic and spending the money and taking the time to go watch LSU play Nichols or South Alabama or even some SEC opponents or sit in 120-degree weather to watch them play UCLA. But what I've always said about Tiger Stadium was proven again on Saturday night, and that is Tiger Stadium remains, in my opinion, the greatest big game venue in this sport that we all love. And there's going to be times where it's not that. But I would argue that Tiger Stadium, when you're talking about big games and moments, is as good as it comes in the world. I don't know what it's like to watch Champions League soccer in Europe or, I don't know, elite cricket matches in India. I don't know. I've never done that, but I can't imagine just the humanness of what we got to watch on Saturday night could be bested most anywhere in the world. And the reality is what is gained in opportunities like that is immortality. Listen, sometimes we know the situation is ripe for a great moment. You have a ranked opponent coming in, the uneasiness, the anxiety of fear of losing, which was certainly there on Saturday when LSU played Ole Miss. Expectation, stakes. The loser of this game was going to have a second loss, and for all intents and purposes, their playoff hopes were gone. So a lot of those things come into play. All of that was true back in 2018 when LSU hosted Alabama and LSU got shut out. It was not competitive. It was a dud. And that happens sometimes. So it doesn't always come to pass that when you have these moments, they live up to the expectation. But when they do, you have something so special. And when they do, you have something special that people will remember forever. On Friday, I had the good fortune to be a part of an LSU Alumni Association event at the Lod Cook Conference Center on campus. And they brought out these LSU legends, and it was a Football Friday panel and everything. But there was an LSU Legends panel, and Dr. Brad Davis was one of the panelists. And I couldn't help but think, if you don't know, of course, Dr. Brad Davis was the LSU player who caught the game-winning touchdown in 1972. Burt Jones to Brad Davis against Ole Miss the night the clock stopped. They wrote songs about it, the 1 Second Blues. It's part of LSU and Ole Miss lore. And Brad Davis wasn't an All-American caliber player. He played for LSU. He was a good player. I'm not saying that in any way, but the point is, 52 years after that play, 52 years after that play, this man is on LSU's campus at an alumni event telling stories from that night. That is immortality. That is not easily achieved. It's rare when it happens, but when it happens, you know it instantly. And my point is to say, in the same way that until the day he died, people reminisced with Dr. Billy Cannon about his Halloween night run. And Jacob Hester, who's a colleague of mine, can't go anywhere in this town around LSU without people bringing up Florida in 2007. That's when good players or even great players gain immortality. What you do in those moments on that stage in those games, Mason Taylor, for the rest of his life, will be reminded of the 2-point conversion against Alabama in 2022 in overtime for the rest of his life. Jaden Daniels, the Florida game in his Heisman season. Those moments don't come often. And we were treated to another one on Saturday night. 4th and 5. Less than a minute remaining in the ball game. Garrett Nussmeier to Aaron Anderson. That is a play we will talk about for as long as we live. For as long as the good Lord allows us to breathe air and live this beautiful, amazing life, we will talk about Garrett Nussmeier to Aaron Anderson on 4th and 5 to tie the ball game against Ole Miss with less than a minute to play. And we will talk about Kyron Lacey in overtime from Garrett Nussmeier on the first play from 25 yards out to win it, setting off a euphoric celebration, fans storming the field, which, I'm not crazy about. We're LSU. The days of storming the field for beating Ole Miss are long gone, but have your fun. The point being, those moments we will talk about forever. Mason Taylor on that same drive, 19 yards on 3rd and 10. Earlier in the fourth quarter, a 4th down conversion on 4th and 10. Mason Taylor again came through. Those are the types of moments that we will remember forever. They're the moments that when I was a kid, we used to have this. My dad had a cassette. It was all these great LSU moments, and it was play calls, and you listening to the 1 Second Blues and J.C. Polite's call of Billy Cannon's run, and all those things. You start to create your own. Matt Malk to Skylar Green against Georgia in 2003. Burrow to Jefferson on 3rd and 17 against Texas. We all know the plays, the iconic moments. And on Saturday night, we added a few more to the vault that we'll be able to talk about for the rest of our lives. And that's a really awesome thing. I want to talk about the game itself and certainly the consequence of winning that game and what it means for this team. We're going to do that as we continue. It's Locked on LSU, and I'm glad you're here. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Where to begin? When you have a game like LSU and Ole Miss that goes to overtime, is as dramatic as that one was, it's hard to find a starting point. But maybe the best place to start with this game is actually how it finished. Of course, Ole Miss kicked a field goal late in the fourth quarter to give themselves a 7-point lead, 23-16. And it was another instance where the LSU defense stepped up big in a tough spot and held Ole Miss out of the end zone, held them to a field goal, and gave the offense an opportunity to go win the game. And what ensued is a drive we'll remember forever. On first down, Kyron Lacey, deep ball was open. Nussmeier missed him. It was not Garrett Nussmeier's best day, I think, by his own admission. But even still, when you had to have the plays, he made them time and again. On 2nd and 10, you ran Caden Durham for 4 yards. On 3rd and 6, Nuss had to throw it away. You were facing 4th and 7. Mason Taylor for 14 yards. Extended the game. Game's over right there if you don't complete the pass. But on the left side, Mason Taylor, who struggled today, struggled to get open, struggled to find his targets, comes through with a 14-yard reception. First down, incomplete. This was a trend. You had 4 first downs on this drive. All 4 times you threw it on first down, all 4 times incomplete, leaving you 2nd and 10. And all 4 times you overcame it. On 2nd and 10, Aaron Anderson caught a pass for 18 yards and went to review. They overturned it. Probably a good call. So now you have 3rd and 10. Who do you go to? Mason Taylor. 19-yard reception. Now he housed it, but they called it back on review because his elbow was down, which was probably a good call. First down, incomplete. 2nd down, Mason Taylor, 10 yards. All of a sudden, you're at the Ole Miss 23-yard line. First down, incomplete, intended for Xavion Thomas in the end zone. 2nd down, incomplete. 3rd and 10. This is the game. You're in this inside of a minute now. You run Josh Williams on 3rd and 10 to make it 4th and 5. At least now you have a manageable down and distance. And Garrett Nussmeier didn't play it safe. He threw the ball into the end zone, and Aaron Anderson caught it for a touchdown reception that we will remember forever. And one of the things that was so stunning about that play is they showed an end zone angle of it on the television broadcast. Aaron Anderson was walled between 2 defenders, and he was not open when Nussmeier threw it. Garrett Nussmeier was throwing to a spot. And it's one thing if this is 2nd and 10 with 8 minutes to play in the first quarter. This is the ball game. If you don't get 5 yards, the game is over. And Garrett Nussmeier wasn't looking for 5 yards. He was looking for the kill shot. And he threw a beautiful ball, and Aaron Anderson rewarded him by making a sure-handed catch. And we know what transpired after that. Incredible. In overtime, Ole Miss found themselves behind the sticks, holding on first down, an incomplete pass on 1st and 20. On 2nd and 20, they had to call a timeout. Coming out of the timeout, there was a false start, so it was 2nd and 25. Incomplete pass, beautiful pass breakup there by freshman P.J. Woodland in a gigantic spot. 3rd and 25, an incomplete pass. No, excuse me, on 2nd and 25. Forgive me, on 2nd and 25, that was the ball that Jordan Gilbert tipped and nearly intercepted. On 3rd and 25, Zy Alexander had an interception in his hands that he dropped. And on 4th and 25, of course, they made a 57-yard field goal. One play later, Kyron Lacey from Garrett Nussmeier, and the Tigers win it. There was a lot that transpired in the game and a lot of people that need to be highlighted. Just from the very beginning, Brian Kelly elected to receive again after winning the toss, something that I loathe, as you all probably know if you listen to this show, because you want the extra possession in the second half. You want the ball to start the second half and the opportunity to go back-to-back end of the first half, start of the second half. Brian Kelly's team made up for his bad decision. LSU opened the game by going 3 and out. On the second play for Ole Miss, they had an 81-yard touchdown that would have been a walk-in by Trey Harris, but he dropped it. And this was the theme of the first half. Ole Miss had opportunities to build a lead early, and they didn't do it. Tigers would go 3 and out again. Ole Miss would drive the length of the field. LSU's defense would come up big, force a 32-yard field goal attempt. No good. Just like that, Ole Miss could have been up 10-0. Instead, there's no score. LSU gets the ball after the missed field goal. The second play was the deflected interception by Garrett Nussmeier. So now 6:15 to play in the first quarter. Ole Miss is in business at the LSU 13. And just like that, you force them to go for it on a 4th and 1, and Braden Swinson comes up with the TFL, the big stuff. So just like that, 3 possessions for Ole Miss, 3 scoring opportunities. They got nothing. Certainly part of that is coaching. Part of that is execution. But it opened the door for LSU. And when you let an underdog hang around, I know a lot of people didn't want to think of LSU as an underdog in this game, but LSU was the underdog. And Ole Miss was a more talented football team, 1-85. They led the entire football game until they didn't at the end. Overtime, Kyron Lacey's touchdown was LSU's first lead of the ball game. LSU was never even tied in the ball game after 0-0. So Ole Miss had their opportunities early. They couldn't cash in. LSU's defense was opportunistic, and the Tigers kept hanging around. Ole Miss would kick a field goal. They would bust a 50-yard touchdown run where even that play, even that 50-yard touchdown run, which was so disappointing because Ole Miss got the ball near midfield because LSU went forward on 4th and 2. I don't know if it was a poor play design or poor execution, but Caleb Jackson, it was just wrong from the start. Caleb Jackson got thrown for a 2-yard loss, so Ole Miss takes over at their own 41-yard line. And then on 4th and 1, they bust a 50-yard touchdown run. And it wasn't like there was a gaping hole. Major Burns did a great job filling the hole. The running back, Ulysses Bentley, kicked it to the right, and Jordan Gilbert was waiting for him, and he just couldn't bring him on the ground, and then it was curtains. So even on plays like that, you're there. It's just a matter of executing better because your guys are in the right position to make these plays. So they're up 10-0, and you needed an answer, and you got it. A 6-play touchdown drive. Trey'Dez Green with the 12-yard touchdown reception. It's 12-7. Ole Miss gets the ball with 5.5 minutes to play in the first half. Again, it's a 10-7 ball game, and this is when they put together a scoring drive where Trey Harris got them back up 17-7. But it was on this drive that a pivotal thing happened. It was on this drive that Whit Weeks was flagged for targeting. And they ultimately picked up the flag, and I'm glad they did. Because while we can all agree the spirit of the targeting rule makes sense, nobody wants dangerous plays in the game. Jackson Dart was sliding, and Whit Weeks hit him. I don't know what you would expect anyone to do in that situation. So thankfully, level-headed minds prevailed there, and Whit Weeks stayed in the game, and it proved massively important. Because the LSU's down 17-7 right now. The Tigers would put together a field goal drive. This was a play where they scored the touchdown from Xavier Thomas that was overturned, which, again, I had tipped Sean McDonough on the broadcast because I think the ball hit the ground. But there was nothing indisputable to say Xavier Thomas was not possessing the football. Anyway, you settle for a field goal at 17-10, and Ole Miss, with 34 seconds, is going to try to make something happen. And on the first play, guess who forced a fumble? The aforementioned Whit Weeks, who, by the way, had 18 tackles in this ballgame. That was as phenomenal an individual effort on the defensive side as I've seen since Damone Clark against, incidentally, Ole Miss back in Oxford in 2021. When he had 20 tackles on that day. Whit Weeks was absolutely everywhere. 18 tackles, 10 solo tackles, a sack, 2 TFLs, a pass breakup, and the forced fumble we were just mentioning there. If Whit Weeks isn't in the game, I think it's not a stretch to say LSU doesn't win. He was your best defensive player. He consistently gave you energy and pacing, and in that moment gave you an opportunity to get points. Remember, we talked about Ole Miss wanting the opportunity to go back-to-back, end of the first half, start of the second half. Well, instead, Whit Weeks made sure LSU had another opportunity there to put points on the board. They would convert the field goal to make it 17-13, which would be your halftime score. Ole Miss got the ball to start the second half, and it looked like they were going to go down. They were moving the football. They got into LSU territory, and then Major Burns comes up with the sack fumble. They ruled Jackson Dart, recovered it, but the damage was done. The sack, the personal foul penalty after that, and a false start. All of a sudden, it's 3rd and 37, and then they end up punting to you. There's a couple of moments in that second half where the game didn't feel great. Damian Ramos missed the 46-yard field goal. I was doing a post-game show with T-Bob Abier. He noted that the snap was poor. So it really was, executing a kick like that, it's snap, hold, kick. All three elements have to be perfect, and the snap wasn't great, and that's one of the things that certainly contributed to Ramos missing that kick. But then they got the ball. They're going right down the field. Again, it looked like they were going to score. You end up dialing up pressure. You settle for a 35-yard field goal. This was the story of the game. Every time your defense was challenged, they gave up yardage, but they kept coming up with the big plays. They held Ole Miss to threes. Even after LSU turned the ball over deep in their own territory, LSU's defense turned Ole Miss's offense away. This was the real story of the football game for LSU defensively. They gave up 464 yards, and I don't think anybody's going to be super pumped about that. Ole Miss was 11 of 22 on third down, but they were just 3 of 5 in their red zone chances. A missed field goal and getting stuffed on 4th and 1, and another chip shot field goal. The defense continuously turned Ole Miss's offense away and gave the LSU offense an opportunity. Now, after LSU kicked a field goal to make it 20-16, you got an interception on the next possession. Again, it looked like they were going to score. And Zy Alexander comes up with the interception. You're in the fourth quarter now. And on the first play of the ensuing series, Garrett Nussmeier throws his second interception of the day. And that was a low moment. That was a low moment because you're in a 4-point ball game. You're getting the ball back thinking, okay, here's your chance to go maybe take the lead, your first lead of the game. Late in the game, you put the pressure on them. And instead, one play, you give it right back. But what did your defense do? 3 and out. On 3rd and 10, Braden Swinson comes up with another sack. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Now, LSU would get the ball, wouldn't be able to do anything with it. They'd punt. Ole Miss would add a field goal, so now you're down 7. You need the touchdown. And they got the drive we just talked about, a drive that I think we will talk about for as long as we are fortunate enough to live this life on this planet and be LSU fans. Tigers got the ball with 3:14 to play. They went on a 13-play, 75-yard touchdown drive that ate up 2:47 off the clock. And Aaron Anderson from Garrett Nussmeier, the play that we'll talk about forever, including the 4th down conversion from Mason Taylor. But another incredible moment from Garrett Nussmeier when you had to have it. In the bowl game against Wisconsin, you had to have the drive. At the end of regulation, you had to have the drive. In overtime, you had to have the drive, and you consistently got it. What an incredible day. The other player, there's so many players we could highlight. I'm thrilled for Kyron Lacey getting that touchdown. I'm thrilled for Aaron Anderson, the touchdown. Whit Weeks, who we just mentioned the day, he had. I thought Zy Alexander played outstanding as well. There's so many individual instances we could talk about, but one I would like to highlight in particular is Kyron Lacey. On the field goal drive before the end of the half, the first play was a deep ball to Kyron Lacey where he drew PI, but if you remember, he came down awkwardly, hyperextended his leg, and I think we all thought the same thing. Not only was Kyron Lacey not done for the day, he was back in on that drive and caught a 15-yard pass. And then we know, of course, he would go on to catch the game winner. And on the day, Kyron Lacey ended up with 5 catches for 111 yards. That's now back-to-back 100-yard receiving games for Kyron Lacey. And the touchdown, which was certainly the biggest play of the game. What a day. What a day in Tiger Stadium. What a win for LSU, and a very consequential win as well. I want to talk a little bit about that as we wrap up Locked on LSU, your team every day. Well, bet you wish you'd listen to me. When a game like that comes and goes, you think, man, I'd love to have been there. Could have been there with our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is my favorite ticketing app. If you want to be in that number in Tiger Stadium, maybe you love other live events, whatever it may be, music, theater. If you want to be there to experience it, it's got to be Game Time. Look, we all know Tiger Stadium is going to be raucous the rest of the way. You got a couple of road games before you have an open day and you're home against Alabama. You want to get those tickets? Get them at Game Time. Look, Game Time has all-in pricing. Mention this to you all the time. You got to turn on that feature, but when you toggle, it'll show you the total up front. So there's no surprise fees at checkout. You get panoramic seat views in the app before you buy. They've got the lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and they have Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Why aren't you using Game Time? Take the guesswork out of tickets and buying tickets with Game Time and Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So it's fair now to talk about what's next, that LSU has won this game and whether or not they're a college football playoff contender. And the short answer to that question is yes. One of the things that we talked about and have talked about pretty consistently is, what would it take to get in the playoff? Well, most people have said 10-2 should get you in. And I think that's a really good starting point. I also don't think everybody that goes 10-2 is going to get in. I think it's how your 10-2 looks. Well, when you have a win over top 10 Ole Miss, you challenge yourself in the non-conference against Southern Cal, although Southern Cal losing their third game of the season already is disappointing. And Southern Cal had Penn State beat at home. Penn State ended up forcing overtime and then won it in overtime. But that's a game Penn State or USC led throughout. That would have been a marquee win and certainly would have looked a lot better on LSU's schedule from their opponent strength of schedule standpoint. But you have a road win at South Carolina, which continues to look better after South Carolina gave Alabama a scare and all they wanted in Tuscaloosa. Now this win over Ole Miss. And what you still have ahead: at Arkansas, at Texas A&M, Alabama, at Florida, who went to overtime with Tennessee. The SEC is hard, y'all, by the way. Vanderbilt. And then, of course, Oklahoma in Tiger Stadium, who got run out of the building at the State Fair there at the Cotton Bowl in Texas by the Longhorns, who might be the best team in college football. We'll see. But, it's a schedule that is wrought with landmines and will be very difficult to navigate unscathed. But having won this game now, 5-1 at the halfway point, it is certainly plausible to think if you go 5-1 the rest of the way at 10-2, that you should be one of the top 12 teams in the country and be in the playoff. Now, the question is, can you go 5-1 the rest of the way? That is challenging. Look, you're going to Arkansas this week, and that's an Arkansas team that always plays you tough. It is certainly an emotional letdown spot for LSU. This is a road conference game at a place where Tennessee just went and lost, and Arkansas is coming off a bye. If you get past Arkansas, you got to go to Texas A&M, which last week blew out Missouri at Kyle Field. A&M was off this week. They play at Mississippi State before they come home to take on LSU. If you manage to navigate that, you have an open date before you play Alabama, who is in a world of hurt right now after losing to Vanderbilt, and they got all they wanted from South Carolina. And boy, they tried to give South Carolina that game. South Carolina just didn't want to take it. And then it's Florida in Gainesville the week after Alabama, another letdown spot. Then you're home against Vanderbilt, who I think we all can appreciate. Vanderbilt is a much tougher out now than any of us thought even 8 days ago. Excuse me. By the way, Vanderbilt beat Kentucky on Saturday, 20-13. So Vanderbilt's now 4-2 in the league, 4-2 overall, 2-1 in the league. Their two losses, they lost to Missouri, where they had a chip shot field goal. They missed at the gun, and they blew a double-digit fourth quarter lead against Georgia State or Georgia Southern, one of the Georgias. Anyway, point is, there's no easy games the rest of the way. It's how it is in the SEC. But this is also an LSU team that has shown it's capable of playing with the best teams on its schedule. So go 5-1 the rest of the way. You'd be 10-2. You should be in the playoff. The really interesting thing is, if you go 5-1 the rest of the way, depending on who that one loss might be to, you could find yourself in Atlanta for the SEC championship. Remember, your first loss, of course, was a non-conference loss. So the only loss in that sense would be one conference loss, which could put you in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. A lot is on the table. This was a massive, massive win for LSU, an equally consequential loss for Ole Miss, as it's now their second league loss, and they lose a head-to-head against LSU. So let's say hypothetically LSU and Ole Miss both do end up 10-2. LSU's got a head-to-head. They'd be in over Ole Miss. So a great night in Tiger Stadium, but a massive win as well for the Tigers here in this 2024 season for what their goals and their ambitions may still be. And we'll be here talking about it every single day. All right, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. If you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And be sure to let a friend know if they love the Tigers. And how could you not after Saturday night? We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.